Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 nerds by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy's Ted.
And today we talk about you don't need wild mage sorcerers to add chaos magic into your D&D game.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
Alright man, the storms are brewing and it's full of chaos.
Lightning crashes in the background and it's not the color you would expect.
So we have used chaos storms throughout our campaign since we started Chimes of Discordia. So we figured we'd give it a little more love, discuss it a little bit more, maybe, share some of the examples of ways we've used it in our games and what we can do with it.
Yeah. Initially your first session of your game, there was a chaos storm and it wound up creating a portal into the first Dragonborn realm.
Loosely. So I left behind this phenomenon, and it was just like this prismatic curtain that you guys were kind of investigating, which then turned out to be a one-time, one-way portal that apparently simultaneously it created this event in another realm. So there's these two curtains. So it just so happens that both Gryffindor and the Dragon Emperor had sent people to investigate this phenomenon. They fell through. They ended up in our world, Ulfgang, Chimes of Discordia, and it also brought with them the crazy chaos ooze that you guys had to ended up defeating. And after the confusion was sorted out, there were now dragon men that have never been seen before. Right,
and this was a way of having Dragonborn enter our world that hadn't been seen in many ages. And it then got to take this race and have that become something unique and interesting in the world, as opposed to, they've just always been there,
Right. So like you said, that was one of the earliest instances, but we've kind of expanded upon that and we've used it in different ways. And I guess so. Let's talk about what is a chaos storm.
Well, our world, I believe, if my memory serves, is we are closer to the plane of chaos, and it's a bleed over effect from that. So at times when a regular storm could brew, it siphons energy from that plane, creating a number of wondrous and magical effects that then create further things beyond, and we'll get into that as well.
Sometimes terrible and horrifying as well.
Absolutely. So the chaos storm has the ability to produce known magic. It has the ability to produce unknown magic. It has the ability to transform. It took a Nothic and made it bigger. Covered it in strange crystalline growths. Gave it new powers, and we've got Murphy McCrystaltop that is a friend to Gryffindor now, and he's used his powers for good, even if he is a little bit creepy.
The power of the chaos storm is that they can blow in, they can blow out, they can move kind of like a normal storm. They can stay in one spot and just stay there and never leave. I believe we have an area in our world where that's the case, where there's just chaos storms. They're constantly raging and they pretty much never stop. And that's an area that Nate's been curating and playing with a little bit. And the other thing is they could pass through and nothing could happen. Or they could pass through, pick up part of an area and put it somewhere else. Or they can just totally transform the landscape. And that's kind of where we get into something that we've toyed with the idea, but I don't think we've fleshed it out and explored it quite enough. And that is the idea of the chaos prospector, or these chaos storm chasers.
Now you've used those, I think more than anyone else, if anyone else have actually used them. You did it in a one shot, and you did it in the one game for your primary game that we play here, and they go off and they harvest things that come from these storms. Now I'm going to assume that based off of Murphy McCrystaltop, the crystalline entities is the things that they're looking for, but it could be other stuff like the chaos ooze that you mentioned might have magical properties, and they try to slay or capture these creatures. This could be in essence a chaos storm chaser could be a background in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, we even discussed that a little bit. What does that mean? What kind of skills would they need? Like you said, like maybe they're harvesting crystals that get left behind, but maybe the wood has been warped and changed by it. Maybe metals have been warped. Like anything could have been infused with that energy and be holding it. You know, so you're gonna need different skills depending on how it's come to infuse the area, and figuring out what to take and what not to take is probably part of the skill set as well. And then the question is, once they have it, what do they do with it?
Well, in a world where magic is ever present, we have gods that have the ability to, if they so choose, to come and walk the mortal plane. We have people who have the ability from birth to manipulate magic. It is nothing like the world that we live in, so magic is going to be present. So therefore, magical things are going to be useful to those type of creatures, or to those type of people. So they're going to pay money for this stuff, and maybe a single storm, doesn't produce much of anything, or maybe only once a year the prospectors actually find something of significant value that they can actually sell, to these mages and what have you, and that's enough to keep them chasing for another year, another season, or what have you. So just like the gold miners, where they'll pan all year and all it takes is one good get, and they're like, all right, we're loaded, we're good, we don't have to keep going, or we expand.
So I like that idea because it creates a reason for the prospectors to exist and be there. But at the same time, most of the time it's a big zilch and they don't make money. I know people that pan amateurly, right? And they're looking for gold and stuff. And maybe once in a while they'll get something and, they make a couple $100 or something. But usually it's, if you take all the investment they put in equipment and time, it never really equals out. And I like that idea where, yeah, you could get a big score, but most likely you won't. You could take years to find one big score that's going to set you up, and maybe most never do. But they always hear about that one band that did, and they never had to work again, or perhaps particular prospectors are really good at it, and they're just better at finding it than others. Because clearly that even in the real world, there's kind of analogs to that with finding mines and different resources. Like in the one adventure I ran, the one set of prospectors, they were using Nothics to chase the magic because they were able to sense it. So they thought they found their way. But in the process, they're also kind of enslaving them and mistreating them as well. And it is kind of how we got Murphy McCrystaltop.
So I like the idea of magic being a thing. So while a background as a Chaos Storm Chaser is not going to give you proficiency in Arcana, I think your big wigs are going to be the ones who have to know about it. Maybe you're going to be, an A student because you went half elf and you took Arcana as a race thing. So you're one of the lead prospectors because you know what to look for. You know where to go, or have a better chance than the average guy. But we look at survival. I mean, you're out there chasing a storm, so you're gonna need to know how to look for clues, how to live out in the wilderness.
Yeah, we had kind of workshopped this a little bit, and we figured the skills would be survival and investigate, because you're looking for clues, you're looking for traces that a storm has been through, you're trying to figure out where they go, and also survival is probably going to be the skill that's going to allow you to kind of analyze weather patterns.
Right. But then, of course, there's a wide variety of tools. If it can infuse wood, if it can infuse stone, if it can infuse metal, anything that you're going to use to harvest those materials are going to become important.
Yeah, we kind of came up with a list of some of the tools that you could tap into, which would be alchemist supplies, herbalism kit, mason's tools, navigator's tools, wood carver's tools. And all of them are going to be useful for harvesting stuff, extracting, maybe there's tests that you have to run. That's why the alchemist lab is in there. Or, you're kind of getting the energy out or the substance out. You're separating things. Almost like the panning version for the Chaos Sorcerer. Chaos Storm. They're trying to leave behind the stuff that isn't of value and just take what is. And there also might be a case where it's got a shelf life, right? Most of the time, the stuff is going, the cast magic is going to fade. So even the things, usually things you could use it for, you're gonna have to use it quickly. And depending on the strength of the storm, might determine how long that it lasts. So you may not have a lot of time. I like the idea of using this kind of stuff for alternate spell components as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where maybe it empowers the spells. Like we might make up a thing where it does that, and then maybe they also have to make a wild magic surge check as well, almost like the chaos sorcerer.
The wild mage, yeah. I mean, I think that would be a perfect way to add these things, and that could be, you know, these roving bands of you know, storm chasers. They would have the ability to not only be looking for, but they could set up, you know, shops and stalls, and you could find some random trinkets and things, because let's face it, if they're harvesting stuff, they're going to find things. So they might have some things of value. They might have basic resources that, well, I cut down this tree anyway. Let's turn it into timber and, you know, put it on the wagon, and, you know, hopefully we can get some coin for it.
Well, yeah, some of it might just be things have odd and unusual appearances and properties, where it technically is magic, but not a useful magic that does anything. It's just kind of interesting or fun or something different. Maybe it could be sinister and have some bad side effects that weren't accounted for. You know, who knows? But yeah, they might also set up, like you said, stalls where they just start selling off some of this stuff. They do have tradespeople and craftspeople with them, so maybe they take some of that stuff and put it into jewelry or other kind of like knick-knack type stuff.
Yeah, it's a way for them to, you know, pay the bills and keep the people fed.
So one of the other things we did too was kind of come up with a trait or feature for the background, and that was bureaucratic navigation. Basically, they can get in front of bureaucrats or nobles or whoever they need to set up and stake a claim. It doesn't guarantee they'll be able to do everything they need to. It just, all it does is gives them the opportunity that they'll be able to get an appointment. They'll be able to get a meeting. They know who to talk to. They generally can figure out the channels you have to go through relatively fast because of their nomadic ways, and they travel so much, and they've dealt with so many bureaucrats, aristocrats, and nobility.
All right, so let's you know, that pretty much wraps up what you're going to get from the Storm Chaser background. Yeah, so let's dive back into the Chaos Storm, and, you know, wrap that up, you know, with you know, some more options and some things that, you know, we might be able to chase.
Well, I think what we should do is maybe just use a couple examples from our game and how we used it, and we can kind of delve back into this topic again later on. So we don't do like a 4-hour video. Maybe we should do a 4-hour video.
What do you guys think? So, like, you know, I used it in my game, you know, sometimes to, you know, just set the mood of, okay, you know, you're living in a world where these things kind of pop up, and it changes the feel. You know, a regular storm where you might get struck by lightning or you will get rained on is not as bad in a typical fantasy game. Like, you know, there's ways to, oh, well, I'm just going to make myself resistant or immune to lightning damage, or, you know, I'm going to, oh, we'll just go get cover. Well, what happens if that cover has the ability to melt away, or it has the ability to transform and become something that you weren't expecting?
Like a cloaker.
Like a cloaker, like a mimic, what have you. Oh, what happens if that rain puddles together and makes an ooze that is now sitting outside your shelter, and you've got nowhere to go, and maybe that ooze is too powerful for you. So, like, there's a number of things that can change with the concept of the storm. I've used it to actually create a portal, and you guys were in an in-between world, and there was hey, I wanted to put a crazy wizard tower and have a cool encounter, offer some things and some treasure that might not have been known to the world before, and, you know, I don't have to worry about upsetting the balance of magic on the prime, because you're not getting the stuff from the prime. It's from somewhere else.
Yeah, the Maze of Mandoon starts with the idea of a chaos storm that the players are taking refuge from it, and the chaos storm actually transforms them to someplace else that they have to deal with. You know, Trouble with Prospectors was the one shot that I ran, and is kind of the one we've been talking about. And it doesn't deal with the storm itself, but it deals with the aftermath of a storm.
Right.
So, we've used it for several different ways in our game. More recently, we had I used a kind of like a epic level monster that actually had attracted chaos storms to it, and they were traveling with it. Although it didn't seem very effective by it, but the area around it sure did.
Absolutely.
And there are just a couple examples, and I feel like we've probably done more over the few years that we've been adventuring in Chimes of Discordia, and I'm sure there will be many more.
So the concept is you have the ability to alter anything and everything that you want. You want to lift the players out of wherever they are and put them somewhere else for tonight's adventure. Whether it's because one of the players didn't make it to the game, whether it's because you want to break the tension of what's going on and remove them from the current landscape, the current plot lines, for whatever reason. These are something that you can shift or insert right into the ongoings, and once you've been changed or moved, now you have to deal with this before you can get back to the things that you want to do.
Yeah, for us, it becomes a plot device essentially to do anything that bucks the norm, breaks physics, breaks the rules of the universe as the players understand them. And so we've introduced this basically wild card plot device that we can pull out of our pocket whenever we want and kind of use it, and we have.
Absolutely. Now, with the latest Unearthed Arcana that came out into the wild, and they gave you an example of, here's this place. Well, chaos storms kind of happen, or can kind of happen anywhere. So I think it would be really cool to put together that kind of layout for something like this. And it's not going to give you all the options because, let's face it, technically anything can really be done with a chaos storm. So would you guys have interest in us making something like that? Would you want to put forth any ideas to, insert into any of that and into that kind of stuff? So if you have any ideas, or if you want to weigh in on should we do it or not, down in the comments below, continue that conversation. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can hang out with us over at nerdarchy.com.
So until next time, stay nerdy.